What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. We've got another training session to go over today. This is my Pull A training session from just the other day, so just 2 days old is the footage that we are watching here. Just kind of want to go over this particular session and kind of talk about the programming and everything and just some miscellaneous things that kind of pop into my head. So the first thing that I'll say is that this workout got done in an order that I don't typically do. And this has kind of been pretty common for me as of late. You know, I have a preferred order that I like to do my workouts in. If I can go into the gym and the gym is relatively empty and I can do my workouts in the order that I prefer, then that's obviously what I want to do. But in a lot of cases, that just isn't realistic. Something is taken, and you know, just to try and keep time in the gym down, I will just do things in slightly different order. So I'm starting off with the shrugs today. I typically don't start off with the shrugs, but the shrug was available on this particular morning. And I also have been kind of dealing with some trap issues, especially in the morning. So this is a morning session that I did. And I find when I wake up in the morning that my neck and my traps are pretty tight. And so I wanted to do my trap work at the beginning, and that may kind of seem strange to some people. You know, why would I train a muscle that's tight or sore? And that is because training it actually helps loosen that area up for me. So when I get into the shrugs at the beginning, my traps feel pretty tight and pretty sore. And then in between the sets of the shrugs, and obviously while doing the shrugs, my traps are contracting and stretching, which is causing them to, contract and relax. And by the time I get in between, you'll see I'm just kind of doing some back and shoulder and neck stuff, just kind of getting warmed up and everything. By the time I finish these, my neck and traps are all loose and ready to go. So I figured on this particular day, the shrug was open. We'll go ahead and we'll get these knocked out first. I'm doing these seated because this particular shrug machine is deep as hell. I mean, if I do these while I'm standing up, the weight handles are almost all the way down by my ankles. It would be like standing on top of a deficit for a deadlift and bending over and picking up the bar. Like picking up the weight off the ground initially is really hard on this machine because the handles are set so low. So the only reason why I sit is because it simply brings my hands lower on the machine to where I don't have to drop the weight as far. You'll notice at the end of each set, I let go of the machine and I just let it drop down to the ground. And that's literally because even still sitting down, I can't lower it to the ground while still keeping the weight in my hands. It just really bends the shit out of my spine. So you can imagine how much worse it is when I'm standing. It is considerably taller. My other gym has a hammer strength shrug. If you guys scroll back in my other YouTube videos to my other Pull B session, you'll see that I do shrugs there. And that has a similar hammer strength shrug machine, but it doesn't go as deep. It starts a little bit higher. And so I can stand on that one. But that's typically how I've been alternating between my two shrug variations is on Pull A, the workout we're watching today, I will do my shrugs seated and I will do them standing on Pull B. And so even though I'm doing the same exercise, I'm doing it in two different variations. The particular shrug machine that I just did is located pretty close to the jungle gym, which is what I call, the thing that I'm sitting on right now that has all of the different cable attachments and everything. I call that the jungle gym. I don't know what it's actually called, but that's what it reminds me of, is a jungle gym. And I have been doing a lot of ab work lately. If you guys have been paying attention to my TikTok or Instagram and everything, I kind of talked about how I had gotten really lazy about training my abs for like 3 years. And as I've gotten leaner and leaner and leaner throughout this prep, I've kind of realized, like, shit, man, my abs are not very good. So I just started training them realistically. I am in a deficit, so I don't know how much progress I'll be able to make on those. But regardless, I just want to get in the habit of training my abs. If anything, I found that it's helped me just kind of establish a better mind-muscle connection with the abs, which helps me when I'm posing. Whether or not I'm actually building muscle in my ab tissue right now, I really don't know. You have to keep in mind I'm in a deficit. I've been in a deficit for a while. There is the concept that they're relatively newbie gains for me because I haven't trained those muscles in a long time. But realistically, whether or not I'm making difference in them from a growth perspective, I don't know. And if I had to bet money on it, I'm probably not building tons of muscle on there. But still, it's not an excuse for me not to train my abs. And also, by the time that I finish up the shrug, my lower back has a pretty good pump on it. By the time I'm in that bent over position and holding that amount of weight and everything, my lower back has a pretty good pump in it. So I actually find that doing some ab work after the shrugs helps me kind of stretch out that lower back. I mean, think about the position that I'm in when I'm doing the shrug. I kind of have my back arched. My back is in a degree of extension. And then when I move into the shrug here, I am moving that through a position of flexion, which is the opposite movement of flexion, obviously, which will just help create traction and just kind of loosen things up in the spine. And I definitely do believe that is helping. And by the time I finish the shrug, my lower back may be pretty pumped, but by the time I finish the crunches, I feel pretty good, and I feel ready to attack everything that is coming on. In terms of the crunch exercises, the ab exercises that I've been doing, I've been rotating every other session between a decline crunch and the cable crunch that you're seeing here. I really like both of those, and no matter which one it is that I do, I will superset it with hanging leg raises. So I don't actually have that on video, but after both of these sets of these crunches, I walk over to a pull-up bar, and I jump up on the pull-up bar and I will do some leg raises to failure. I'm not really tracking the leg raises and trying to progress the leg raises in terms of weight and reps. Honestly, I do leg raises before every single workout just because I find that it helps stretch out my spine and warm up my hip flexors and all of that type of stuff. So I will do leg raises before every workout regardless. So I don't really track those and try to progress those in terms of weight and reps. I'm more focused on progressing the crunch movement in weight and reps, and then whatever reps that I get on the leg raises are just additional benefit, and I am using the leg raises for like warm up and mobility purposes more so than building the abs. Obviously, if I do end up building ab tissue from them, that's a very positive thing, but that isn't necessarily the main goal with the leg raise. It's more, again, just to kind of get my lower ab and pelvis and hip flexor region warmed up and moving before I get into the heavy compound movements. And I guess that's a good tip for some of you guys. I particularly find this beneficial on a hip hinge movement, like a deadlift or an RDL in my case. I like to superset my warm-up sets of my RDL with some hanging leg raises just to get activation in my lower midsection and my hip flexors, which I find improves my ability to brace when I'm doing the hip hinge movement. So, for some people, they may think that it's causing fatigue, but realistically, how much fatigue are body weight leg raises causing? I mean, it's really not causing a lot. So I would just think about that a slightly different way. The benefit that you gain from improving your ability to move and contract your pelvic region and your hip flexors through space outweighs the very small amount of fatigue that you would accumulate from doing 4 to 5 reps of body weight leg raises. And 4 to 5 reps obviously may not seem like a lot, but if you take those reps nice and slow and controlled, just like how you see me doing all of this, just because I'm training my abs and I'm doing leg raises doesn't give me an excuse to move the weight like shit and do the movement poorly. These leg raises are extremely controlled and extremely smooth and everything. So I just want to make sure that point gets across. If you're doing those appropriately, you really only need to do a couple of them before your lower abs and your pelvic region and everything is really kind of screaming and ready to go. And I really find that helps with my ability to brace and contract my midsection as I'm doing a bent over hip hinge movement. And that's especially important now as my body weight gets lighter and lighter and there's less of me to move the weight throughout space. It's really important that I am bracing to the fullest of my ability. And if doing something like that will help me do that and at the same time potentially improve my abdominal tissue while I'm doing it, then why would I not do that? You know what I mean? So, I would just consider that for some of you guys. If you struggle with bracing, maybe start doing more ab work and particularly lower ab work just because of its ability to help improve the control throughout your lower pelvic region. I got talking about that for so long that I completely didn't talk about this particular pull down here, but I'm going to be honest, guys, there really isn't much for me to talk about here. This is about as classic of a lat exercise as you can get at this point in time. Cable attachment for constant tension within the muscle. This particular pull down station I feel like is specifically created for this particular exercise. The handle placement is directly in front of the body, perfectly in line with the lat. So it's absolutely perfect for that. Obviously, you can replicate that with a bench or kneeling under the pull-down stack. I've shown both of those on my channel tons of times. But I just happened to get lucky at this particular gym that it has a pull-down station that has the foot pad in there for stability. And it's just kind of taken that movement up a notch. This is a new exercise for me, not on this particular session, but over the course of the last month or so. I was doing a hammer strength model of a pull down. It's actually the exercise directly to my right. I know you can't see it in the video, but it's directly right next to this one. And I was kind of doing it with an upper back focus, and then I decided to give this machine a shot one day, and it's way, way, way more upper back focused. It just puts me in a much better position to contract the upper back and get full scapular retraction and full scapular protraction. The handles diverge in the bottom, which just helps with that process, and then they converge at the top, which allows me to get a little bit more protraction. The chest pad placement is perfect, and just the handle alignment is perfect for the upper back. There are some people in the industry who will talk about how a pull down cannot bias the upper back. And you guys should know by now that I'm not really like one of those super like science-y type of guys. I mean, I don't know if I would even consider myself a science-based lifter, really. I mean, some of the stuff that I do is science-based, but at the same time, like there are some people who are science-based who literally base every decision that they make off of a study or a piece of paper. And I think that's a little ridiculous. So from my experience, my opinion, they're just basing that opinion off of what the studies are saying. But I like to think about this very, very simply. With the upper back musculature, what do those muscles do? The upper back, the traps, the rhomboids, all of those things, their main functions are scapular protraction and retraction. And then I ask myself, am I going through scapular protraction and scapular retraction in this exercise? And clearly I am. You guys can look at my shoulder blades and seeing how much scapular movement I'm getting throughout this exercise. And then I ask myself, am I getting a contraction and am I getting a sensation in my upper back musculature? And the answer is yes. And so if I'm getting a contraction in my upper back musculature, my shoulder blades and scapulas are doing the actions that the upper back musculature do, scapular protraction and scapular retraction. You can show me all the studies and literature that you want that say that this particular exercise doesn't hit my upper back, but I think that it's foolish to ignore common sense saying that this particular exercise does train my upper back and it does train it particularly well. Does it tack on some lat recruitment? Yeah, I'm sure it does, but why is that a bad thing? Like that basically just turns this exercise into a compound movement. So now not only am I just getting upper back recruitment, but I'm also getting extra lat recruitment. Some people would hear that and they would say, oh, like you're doing an exercise for upper back, we should try and take the lats out completely. And I think that's ridiculous. I think that there's a time and a place where we isolate muscles, and then I think that there's a time and place where we try and use multiple muscle groups simultaneously. And I think that an exercise like the one that I just showed is a very good example of that. So does it bias the upper back? I don't know if it necessarily biases the upper back, but I would definitely say that that particular pull down biases more upper back than what it does lat. The elbows drive outward, the elbows are flared high, the scapula is protracting and retracting at its maximum range of motion, and my upper back is pumped as fuck. So I don't really need any studies or anything to disprove me otherwise. I think that thinking that the study is correct. in that situation, it is just foolish. Low cable row here, this is kind of like my secondary lat exercise. This is kind of what I'm using to train the lat in a slightly more like mid-range position, maybe a little bit more lengthened as well. My preferred way to train the lat through the lengthened phase is with the hammer strength step back row, but I do the hammer strength step back row in my other pull sessions, so just for variety's sake, I'm using that one. There aren't too many options for lat machines in this gym that mimic a low row like that, so I've just been making do with the cable. It works. It's a really, really good exercise. I do prefer the hammer row. If I only had one pull session to do, I would do the hammer step back row, but I don't on this particular day. The bread and butter of this particular session is the T-bar here, and if you guys have been paying attention to my prep vlogs, then you'll know that I've been giving this thing hell over the course of this diet. I've been able to hold 3.5 plates for 5 reps pretty much the course of the last 5 to 6 weeks. There's been some weeks where it's gone down to 4 and then come back up to 5, and then there's been a couple weeks where I've hit it for 6 and then it's come back down to 5 the next week. But I'm more or less holding 5 reps on this as we go through this diet. Obviously, my brain wants to progress this on a week-by-week basis, but this is one of those exercises that's a lot like a press or a squat or a hip hinge that is pretty heavily affected by my body weight. And obviously, as my body weight is decreasing, it's going to be difficult for me to actually progress this exercise. But as long as my strength isn't getting weaker, and let's say that I'm doing 3.5 plates for 5 reps at 200 pounds, and I'm doing 3.5 plates for 5 reps at 180 pounds, I may not have grown or gotten stronger from 200 pounds to 180 pounds, but I definitely haven't gotten weaker, and so I definitely haven't lost any muscle. So I've kind of talked about this a lot on TikTok and other social media outlets, but in a deficit like this, especially a deficit where the person has lost 30, 40, 50 pounds, we're starting to talk about a considerable difference in my body weight from where I started this cut to where I am now. As long as I'm holding my performance at this point in time, I'm happy with that. There's going to be a time and place where I won't be happy with just holding. I will need to be progressing, and that's going to be more in like a surplus situation when I'm eating more food and my body weight is going up and up. But right now the circumstances are different. My recovery is different. I'm not eating as much food. I'm not as heavy. There's just a lot of things that are going on at this point in time that would prevent me from being able to expect consistent progress on this exercise. But as long as I'm holding my performance, then I know that I'm holding my muscle, which is my goal at this point in time. I'm starting to get into that point where I would say I'm kind of getting into the fourth quarter of my contest prep, so to say. Like, for those of you guys who are familiar with American sports terminology, we're starting to get into the final phase of the prep. Keep in mind, this has been a long prep. I've been dieting since January. The show is in November, so it's going to be an 11-month prep by the time that this is all said and done. So I'm kind of getting into the last 3 months or so of that. So the final quarter, the fourth quarter. And I just need to start being realistic with what's going to be happening in the logbook at this point in time. And my number one goal at this point is to get as much body fat off as I can and get absolutely shredded. But if that is coming at the compromise of my gym performance and my muscle tissue, then I need to reconsider that. I do think that there's going to come a point where the gym performance is just going to take a hit, and that's just going to be what it's going to be. So I don't want to stubbornly hold on to gym performance just to be able to keep my gym performance, especially if that's going to help me get in shape. For example, if I had to choose between keeping my gym performance and coming in on stage day a little chunky, or losing my gym performance and coming in shredded, I would definitely choose the second, because I know that the gym performance will come back as soon as the food and all that stuff comes back in. But at the same time, I need to avoid rapid strength and performance drop off so that I don't go flat and stringy as my body weight drops down. Last thing on here is bicep work. Honestly, bicep work is super boring. If you guys know me and know how I roll, you'll know that I think that arm training and bicep training in particular is more boring than watching fucking paint dry. But my first bicep exercise on this day is a plate-loaded preacher curl. It overloads very heavily in the shortened position. I've been doing 2 working sets on this for a while, but over the course of the past 3 rotations, the second set has been complete dog shit. So I'm going to be reducing that to just one set going forward, just because I really can only get one productive set out of it. So there's no point doing a second one if the second one is poor. And then I move into this incline curl on the cable stack here, just to kind of overload the biceps more in the length and range, and just kind of finish them off. I like to set the seat up on the on this particular cable fly, just to and like drive my legs into it, just to help me create counterforce. Here's me being a pussy and being dramatic. No, just kidding. You know, like I kind of have mentioned earlier, I'm getting to that point now where things are getting hard and things are getting tiring. So, you know, that's pretty much what I look like in between most of my sets nowadays. When I'm peak bulking, I'm usually like pacing around the gym and stuff like that. But right now, there's a lot of sitting that's going on in between sets. So, yeah, that's really all that I wanted to go over today, guys. You know, I didn't really have any particular one topic or anything that I wanted to talk about in today's video. I just kind of wanted to go over the X's and O's of the session and kind of talk about some other miscellaneous things and kind of give you guys a brief little update with what is all going on. As always, if you guys have any questions or concerns about the training or anything, please leave them as a comment on this video. Thank you so much for watching, as always, guys. And as always, take care of yourselves.